What if you could predict your future? Does this seem too good to be true? It can be done. All it takes is using your mind to give thought to how you want your future to look. What is it that you want to see? How do you want to be? And how do you want your life to go? These questions can be answered by you. This isn't about manifesting, it is about creating. If you want to be healthier, speak to your future healthy self and tell her, what are you doing today to help her be healthier? You want to be happier? What is it that you can tell your future self you are doing today to create a feeling of being happy? Thinner, richer, more of something, or less of anything at all? Dear future self, here's what I am doing today to support you. In this podcast, Dear Future Self, based on the book by the same name, author Susan Axelrod, the confidence coach, interviews women who understand the benefit of speaking out what they want for their lives. Why is this important? Because speaking to your future self supports you here and now. What would you say to your future self?
Hello, friends. It's a good question. What would you say to your future self? Welcome to another episode of this deep podcast, which continues to inspire me. Honestly, I love these conversations, and I do go back and watch episodes, gleaning more and more information and inspiration that goes very deep. Today, I'm going to be speaking with someone whom I have come to know as a precious soul. I met Annie McDonnell through our dear friend, coach, partner, colleague, and media specialist, Cornelia Stephanie. I have been getting to know Annie and her work over the last year or two, and I am inspired every day by what she's doing. Her business is called Joy Alchemy. She's an acupuncturist, a healer, a coach, and her tagline says, support for frazzled nerves and tender hearts. I mean, come on. How can you not love this? Additionally, she says easily, I'm interested in helping you understand the unique story of your health condition, treating the root causes, and empowering you to transform your narrative from pain to healing. And I'm here to say that Annie McDonnell does exactly this. Hi, Annie.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here with you, Susan. Thank you for that beautiful intro. It touched my heart.
Well, the work that you do honestly, truly, and deeply touches my heart. Annie, you know me by now. I always pull back the curtain. I keep it real. We meet a few times a month in the group with Cornelia. She fosters and provides and permits us to keep it real with each other, to show up as we are. And sometimes that's not that good, right?
Yeah, that's the reality.
That's the reality. And I've watched you over this time in a very committed and dedicated way, step by step, grow what it is, or I should say, grow out what it is that you want to help people do. So you are an acupuncturist, Annie. This is work that you do, but you also do work in grief and grief acknowledgement and grief healing. So I'd like to invite you to take a moment to tell us about you, tell us about your work, and then we're going to get into speaking to your future self.
Sure. Well, I think if you live long enough, everyone will have experience with grief. It's perhaps the most universal experience because it's based in love, and love is a universal energy that connects us all. And it's this mystery that it's one of the most taboo topics to talk about or reveal honestly and authentically. So after going through my own grief journey over the past few years, I was witness to it over the years. I think I grew up in the shadow of grief because my mother was an orphan and she carried a lot of grief that I picked up on growing up. So it was always something that I was sort of compelled by. And then after going through a crucible of sorts, I'm still going through it. I can't say I come out the other side because I don't know if there is another side. But I've seen many facets of it. And I know what has helped me. And I have, I think, a unique perspective in the grief. I have some training in grief support. But what I don't see often in the grief world is the idea of that we are physical beings and grief isn't just an emotion. It's not just sadness. It's insomnia, it's brain fog, it's exhaustion. It's all sort of physical symptoms that are manifestations of these emotions that we're trying to suppress. It takes so much energy to hold emotions down. I like to give people the image of, if you're playing in the pool or the ocean in the summer and you have a beach ball and you try and hold it underwater. It seems like a simple thing, but it takes so much energy because that ball wants to float. So our emotions want to float and flow. So I like to help people understand the full picture of their grief so that they can then sometimes it's too much to dive into therapy and talk about it. Sometimes you can approach it in a gentle way through your body and comforting your body and creating safety in your body so that you can feel comfortable enough to kind of process this wave of emotion that's almost upending you and your life.
This is so good. I'm looking down. You just saw me turn my pad. I've already been taking notes. So if you see me looking down, it's because I'm writing what you're talking about. Of course, I have experienced extreme grief. In 3 years' time, I lost my father, who was elderly and had a natural demise over a 10-week period. A year plus a few months later, I lost my mother quite suddenly, even though she was 85, a healthy 85. She had a stroke and died 13 days later. And then the following year, sadly and tragically, I lost my husband who was unwell, but still never expected that to happen. And so I'm a year out from this now, but still processing. I can't say enough, Annie, about what you're saying with being tuned in to the fact that you said grief, it's not just an emotion, talking about the emotion, allowing the emotion, but that there also will be physical symptoms that you could work with to also manage your grief. Earlier, you said, I'm not sure that you ever leave grief, that you called it the grief world, and that in some ways it stays with us. And this is part of what I love so much. I've gotten to know you. I listen to you speak. I've read your writing. You have a wonderful resource to share with people. And I really love how you are helping us to understand and process, to be able to integrate a new way of being in life, right? Really, that's what it's doing. That's what you're talking about for yourself as well.
Yeah, I love that phrase, a new way of being, because one aspect of grief that people may not be aware of, because it can be so tender for people to talk about openly too, is that you grieve yourself and the loss of your former identity. Who after your parents die, who am I as a daughter? Who am I as a partner without my physical partner's presence? Who am I with this knowledge that I carry now that the world is precarious and everything comes to an end? So it's a lot to integrate, and it's not something that can be done in, a 2-week bereavement leave.
Right. I just want to stop here for a second, Annie. Always, or often it happens. I want to speak directly to our listeners and our viewers right now. And I want to invite them to get a pad and paper like I have, and listen to what is being said here. Go back and play already just in 10 minutes and 50 seconds of what we have said, and tune in to what Annie just said. When you said you grieve yourself and the loss of your former identity, who am I as a daughter? Who am I now as a partner? For me, my story, Annie. I met my husband when we were 20, and he died at 60. And so for 40 years-ish, after the first year or two getting into the relationship, we married at 25. And so who am I now as a partner, my identity? This is like so good, Annie. Thank you so much for taking your time to come here and speak to us and share, what's in you. This podcast is called Dear Future Self. And so what's happening here is very deep. I want to ask you, since you knew you were going to be a guest on this podcast, before I ask you the big question about speaking to your future self, what do you think of this thesis in connection to this work that you're talking about?
Well, I think a connection to your future self is integral to grief work, because you are, it feels like the earth has dropped out from beneath your feet, and you may be flailing around, and you maybe remember who your former self was, but you're unclear about what the future holds. You're unclear about who you are, who you'll be. So I want the one ray of hope. I hope I haven't sounded too pessimistic in the way I've been talking, because it's not all a bad thing that grief never ends. Grief, for one thing, is great meaning in life, the preciousness of life, and our bonds of love between us. One of my teachers talks about if there is a final stage of grief, or like the people may know about like the 5 stages of grieving, which is a myth in itself. That's another conversation.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, but he talks about if you want to give a 6th stage, it's to find meaning. And again, that's a process. In the early days, that's not the time to try and put a bow on something and say, oh, this means this. It's, the meaning will unfold as you look for it. But you can find new opportunities and gifts and blessings and challenges in growing into a new identity, and weaving the threads between who you were, who you are, and who you're going to be. And you can also use that journey as a way to honor your grief. I know for myself personally, my parents are no longer physically in the world, but they're within me. And every action that I take that honors them, that carries their kindness and their generosity, I am keeping them alive in this world through me. So there are all these threads that we don't necessarily see consciously, that I know my future self, when I look like, if I'm lucky enough to live into my 80s like my parents, physically I'll look like they did at the end of their life, and I'll remember echoes of myself now watching them grow older. And what I what I'll hopefully remember very clearly is as I watched them grow older, and my aunts and uncles as well, what I witnessed was this beautiful process of things falling away. And it was very sad to see them lose capacity in, physical strength and memory issues. But what I saw over and over again with different elderly family members was how they stopped caring about so many, what the hot movie was or this or that. And they just, when you walked in the room, they just wanted to see how you were, to be present with you, to tell you they loved you or that they were happy to see this or that. And it reminded me of, I love nature metaphors because I think there's so much wisdom that we can glean from watching nature. And what I learned was in autumn, when the leaves change color, the color actually was there the whole time. Those reds and oranges and golds were within the leaf the whole time, but they were masked by the chlorophyll because the chlorophyll was doing the heavy lifting of making energy and food and feeding the tree. And then when it came to the point where, you know what, we don't need any more energy, we're going to pull back down to our roots, the chlorophyll falls away and these beautiful colors pop up. And to me, I witnessed that with my elderly family members of that the day-to-day concerns just fell away. And what was left was this intense love and care and concern. And it's beautiful to witness. So when I think of my future self too, I have that in mind, that I have these colors within me that maybe aren't at the forefront right now because I'm busy, building a business and doing this and doing that and, creating an active life. But there's this life force underneath everything that's just waiting to carry me when the time is right. So that's a comfort to me.
I mean, this is so good. The last 2 minutes that you just spoke were really, truly profound, Annie. I also don't apologize for when you said, I hope I haven't been too negative or morose or whatever, because this is real. This is real life. And as you said in the beginning, there's not a person who's not going to suffer grief or whatever. That is going to happen. And what you're offering us are tools and strategies, but also such beautiful, amazing images of the evolved being, which if we go back and listen to that again, will really support from here forward, which is part of the Dear Future Self thesis. If you understand this beautiful image that you just used, where the color is there and the green drops away and the bright hues come out, and that is the blessing of our future, whereby you say the older people you observed just wanted to say, I love you, and see how you are, and really be present with you. This is so beautiful. I love your work. I love watching you. Also, for anybody who wants to follow Annie, you're going to also get in some good laughs because she is a dog person. And
my dog is just off camera. I think he'll growl if I try and lift him up out of his comfortable position.
Yeah. And mine is on his bed right behind me as well. And so I love that you inject humor into your life as well. So let me ask you, Annie, this important question. What would you say to your future self if you had the opportunity to speak directly to her?
Well, when we were setting up this appointment, and you mentioned that this question would definitely play a role. I enjoyed the prompt, and so I used it to write a little note to myself. So I'll just go ahead and read that. Dear future self, I love you like a mother loves her child. I've done my best to create opportunities for you to experience more ease and health and joy, and have happy memories to look back upon. Enjoy your life. Enjoy our life. When you're feeling lonely or afraid, remember that I'm here with you, and you have my boundless love and strength and support. I'm so excited to see what you do next and celebrate your continued evolution.
I love this coming together. I love it's so strange. It's like, here I am, there you are, and we're kind of meeting in the middle. That really, it's so evident in what you wrote there. I love that you say what it is that you're doing now, because the secret behind the Dear Future Self thesis that I created is what it is that you decide, commit to, and do right now. So this morning, for example, when I woke up and knew I had to meet my accountability partner at the gym at 7 a.m., it's dark. It was 8 degrees. I had to get Mr. Cooper out to do his business before I could just take off myself. So I had to wake up early enough for that and go outside in the cold. And then I got to the gym and I said to my friend, we're the bosses of us. We could do this in the afternoon, but we agreed, no, it's good to get out in the morning. But in my own thesis, I speak to my future self and I say, I got to the gym today so that you will be more healthy and more well, more steady on your feet, more balanced, more sturdy in your core, etc. This is an active thesis for me. It's something that I live as well. And that's what I love. If you would be willing to email me your quote, then I will put it in the show notes so that people can learn from how you've crafted the conversation. You said, since we started talking about your being a guest on this podcast discussion, you had a few minutes to think about it. But then as you do, Annie, in the way you show up, you actually did the exercise for yourself. And that's another part of what I love about your work, is because I do get to see you and spend time with you, I know that you're living your thesis. So let me ask you, what would you like to share about your work, your business, the way you've spoken today? I do imagine people might want to get in touch with you. You have in-person work, but you also do virtual work. So what would you like to share?
Yeah, I would love to be of support to people if they need help going through grief. It's not something that's, some of it you have to do alone, but you don't have to do all of it alone. So you can reach me at my website, joyalchemyhealing.com. I'd like for people to know that on the last Tuesday evening of every month, I offer a free virtual collective grief circle. That the first part is some conversation. If people are open to it, you can keep your camera off. There's no pressure to show up and be. You can just experience it in the privacy of your home behind a blank screen. The first part is a little conversation and then some self-care practices to help center yourself and comfort yourself. And calm the nervous system. And then the second half of it is a guided meditation and sound bath, again, to just allow things to be, and allow things to be maybe peaceful, allow any potential messages to come through, or just to feel safe in that moment. So that's a free entry point into getting a sense of how I work. And then I also offer 30-minute Zoom one-on-one sessions that I call Grief Care, which is very flexible. There's no agenda. People show up, and if they want to talk, they can just have a conversation heart to heart with someone who understands what it's like. One thing people may not know necessarily is therapists don't get a lot of training in grief specifically. It's like medical doctors don't get any training in nutrition.
Yeah.
It's like the most obvious oversight, but unless you find a therapist who has extra training in grief, they can often say things that are potentially very insensitive or a little clueless. So I don't have it's not therapy what I offer, but I do have an understanding and lived experience with different perspectives on grief. So sometimes it's talking, sometimes people just want to move, and so I lead them through some light qigong, some yoga stretches, some breathing exercises, some sound exercises, some EFT tapping, whatever's. Sometimes I might suggest a little ritual that someone might do to help honor and move some of the heaviness of the grief. So it really is completely personalized and what's happening in that moment. So you can learn more at my website, and feel free. I think in the show notes, I can maybe put a link to, I also have a free gift if you're in the position where you maybe haven't lost someone yet, but it's on the horizon, and you're experiencing grief, even though you may not feel like you have permission to grieve someone while they're still alive. That's a very real thing as well. So I have a resource that's available for download, so we can put the link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was hoping you would be willing to share this resource with the people who come here and find us. This is such an important resource guide that you've created, talking about anticipatory grief. And I've read it, and I cannot recommend it highly enough, because it's not just the death of someone. There's other areas where you might be anticipating grief or loss. Also, finally, I wanted to acknowledge that I felt and saw and felt the emotion when you talked about your parents, the loss of your parents. And, we in our world, Annie, we cry, you know that, it's no problem. But also my own website is called whatwillyourlegacybe.com. And so I want to say how beautiful and amazing it is that you are a powerful living legacy for your parents. I'm sure they weren't perfect humans, as there are none in the world, but for the blessings and the grace that they lived, and that you received the gifts from them in many ways. You are living out a beautiful legacy, Annie, and I really want to acknowledge that. And I also do some work in Feeling Souls, and I want to say to you, really, truly, deeply, they see what you're doing. It's really a beautiful thing. So that is our time for this discussion on this podcast, Dear Future Self. I hope, speaking directly to the people who are viewing this video or listening to this audio on Transformation Talk Network, I really hope that people will go to your website, will access your information, and really feel the better that they can from being in your presence, from your essence. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you so much, Susan. It was such an honor being here with you today, and thank you for the acknowledgments. I know my parents have been with us this whole time, and it's the highest compliment for me to receive that I'm a living legacy of them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I'll see you soon. Take care.